So let's go. So good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for the participants in Korea. My name is Xavier Piednoir from ETSI, and I welcome you today to an exchange between Europe and South Korea on the topic of IoT and smart cities. We have a very big challenge lying ahead of us with smart cities, especially because the smart cities create a very complex use case for IoT. This is on one hand a very large scale system, actually a system made of subsystems which are themselves full smart systems. We can think of mobility, energy and water distribution, buildings and homes, public services and infrastructures. All of this has to work together and be connected. And beyond the interconnection of systems, there is also the problem of connecting data and understanding data, processing data. There is a very large amount of information which is generated, collected, exchanged, and processed. And on top of that, we have a system where we have a coexistence of critical infrastructures and at the same time consumer level elements. So this creates a lot of challenges where careful planning is needed, where use of, I would say, open and standardized solutions is really encouraged in order to make sure this is all future-proof and interoperable. So these are some topics that we will touch upon today with a first session which will focus on the approaches that are taken in South Korea and in Europe to address the challenges of smart cities. Then we'll move on to examples of implementations in Europe and South Korea in order to see what this means in practice. And then we'll have an open exchange between all presenters and participants. I would like to invite now Mr. Casey Koo from TTA to take the floor and say a few words on behalf of TTA. As you may know, TTA and ETSI are two standards organizations working on ICT, which are partners in 3GPP, in 1M2M, and which have the common goal of enabling interoperability at the global level. So, Mr. Koo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Javier. First of all, thank you very much for your great effort for the arrangement of this workshop. Even we met through the online. I'm very much appreciate all ETSI's colleagues and also TTA expert. And now we with the Dr. Joe and Dr. Jung. Yes, although the COVID-19 situation is still standing in our way, so in this case, the IoT and smart city is a very important, more than important than the past. And this time, as you already know, the last October, we made the initial step for our cooperation and play a role in enabling new channel of the communication between EU and Korea. Maybe you remember that last year, maybe November, Minister of the MSIT and then Deputy Minister of MSIT and then some graph of the EU Connect. We will the promise to the more strong cooperation each country, and then furthermore TTA and ETSI, as you mentioned, we are same partner and very long friends, 3GPP, 1M2M, something like that, and then we also signed the the cooperation agreement 2 years ago in Geneva. Anyway, taking this opportunity to express my gratitude, express my sincere gratitude for great cooperation in this meeting. So I hope that we will have a great, looking forward to a great fruitful result through this meeting. Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you very much. And indeed, there is a very long-standing cooperation between ETSI and TTA. And today, the workshop is actually held under the umbrella of an EU-funded project called INDICO, which is an instrument to help even strengthen even more the cooperation between Europe and partner countries. So actually, this project is, let's say, performed in a very close partnership with the European Commission and specifically the Directorate DG Connect. And Mr. Emilio Davila is here today to say also a few words of introduction and of context to us ahead of the discussions. Emilio, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Xavier, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of Tony De Coster, which is our advisor in DigiConnect for international aspect of digital transformation, which apologies for not having been able to join us. Unfortunately, he fell a little bit sick. Today, it is for me a pleasure to welcome the participants of this workshop between the EU and Korea, aiming to cooperate on Internet of Things and Smart Cities standardization. And as you have mentioned, we are funding the European Union, the project INDICO, because within our political agenda for digital, it's clear that cooperation with other regions towards the development of common global standards is a key issue. And I fully agree with Mr. Ko when he said that in these difficult times of pandemic, of course, we would have like to have this project in a face-to-face situation with our colleagues. But in this situation, without digital technologies and common standards that ensure interoperability, it will have much more difficult to cope with the pandemic. So common open standards are really key. They can drive innovation, and they provide for interoperability solutions. They accelerate market take-up and scale-up of affordable solutions, and they avoid the lock-in and favor the appearance of new digital services, which, as Javier has explained, in the case of smart cities, is a complex issue because many things are interconnected. And ultimately, of course, then they are beneficial for our citizens. And of course, research and innovation projects, they are important because they provide the technology foundation towards these common standards. And this is why we really very much welcome the INDICO project to have organized this series of workshops, cooperation between the EU and Korea. And also we welcome very much this cooperation that the European Standardization Organization and the Korean Standardization Organization, ETSI and TTA, are having for now some years. In the previous workshop that took place in October, we identified IoT and smart cities, as well as cybersecurity, and in particular for IoT consumers application as topic where this cooperation could be in particular successful. So we are looking forward to the discussion in today's workshop, which we believe it's important to go deeper now in these possibilities of cooperation and go into concrete actions between the EU and Korea, both in the research and standardization arena, but also the contribution to common standards in the areas of smart cities and Internet of Things. And without further delay, because the agenda is busy, let me just give the floor to my colleague Jean-Yves Rogier, who is in charge of following the cooperation between the EU and Korea in the digital domain, who will explain a little bit where we are in this cooperation. Thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Emilio. So good morning, good afternoon to all of you. I think, and we all agree, I think from the first presentation, that such workshop is very important as EU and South Korea are leaders on digital, and consequently closer cooperation between the EU and South Korea is of course of mutual interest. So I just want to stress that this year is an important year for the cooperation between EU and South Korea, because recently, in fact, last November, we launched the first dialogue on digital between DG Connect, so the European Commission, and the Ministry of Science and ICT, MCIT, which was an important milestone for our cooperation. So at this dialogue, it was clear that both EU and South Korea have a convergent approach on digital policies, and a number of sectors were really highlighted as priorities for our cooperation, like, for example, intensive computing for AI, of course, standards, AI processors. So currently we are working with a number of initiatives like Indico on organizing follow-up workshops to the dialogue. So that includes, of course, discussion on smart cities like today and tomorrow. It's also about standardization for 5G and 6G, connected cars, and also artificial intelligence, and in particular on our respective approach towards regulation of artificial intelligence. So we are already planning a second dialogue with MCIT, which should take place before end of this year in Brussels, if, of course, the COVID situation permits it. I would like also to underline, because I think it's an important area where which is supporting this work also on standardization, is cooperation on research. In fact, with South Korea, we have established 2 ICT joint calls, which took place in 2016 and 2018, resulting in the launch of 6 projects on 5G, Internet of Things, and cloud computing. And these 2 calls mobilize, in fact, 12 million from each side. So in total, 24 million of investments in research and development for those joint projects. So the dialogue that we just had, in fact, stressed that such activities should continue in the future. And under the new Horizon Europe program, which is starting now, in area like, of course, standardization, but also 6G, cloud, and artificial intelligence. Finally, I would like also to mention that there will be a EU Republic of Korea summit, so between head of states, which should take place early July, and which is the occasion also to put, let's say, our deliverables on digital within the joint statement of the summit, which give, of course, strong political backup for our initiative. So that's what I wanted to give you as a general overview of our cooperation with South Korea, between EU and South Korea. And I would like also to underline, of course, as I said, this year is an important year because we have a significant increase in terms of cooperation activities, and that we need really to grasp this opportunity to reinforce our cooperation. So thank you to the Indico project, and in particular to HCA and TTA for having organized this workshop today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emilio and Jean-Yves, for these words and for stressing again how, tight the cooperation is between Europe and South Korea, but also how many opportunities remain to even strengthen this cooperation. Let's dive deep already in the topic, and I would welcome our 2 next speakers who will give us an insight on the approach to smart cities in South Korea and in Europe. So I would first like to welcome Mr. Daeyeon Cho. the Chief Director of National Strategic Smart City R&D Program at the Korean Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement. And he will present us information about the Smart City Framework, Roadmap, and approach in South Korea. The floor is yours. Thank you. Mr. Daeon Cho, please. Okay. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. I am Daeon Jo, Chief Director of National Strategic Smart City Program. So today, I would like to introduce some roadmap and framework of smart city in South Korea. So, it's a very dangerous pandemic situation, but thinking about Korea achievement about against the pandemic by use of smart city solutions, I will explain later. But thinking about the history of Korean urban development, so after Korean War, we developed new cities and we planned so many metropolitan plan, new town plan. So after 2000, we combined the ICT solutions with urban development. That's the happening of ubiquitous city early 2000. So after that, we integrate the CCTV data and any other urban data in one integrated operation center. After that, we developed and improved the analyzing some data, and we get some solutions from a combination of each data. So nowadays we call it fourth industrial revolution era. So the proposal of smart city is summarized three missions. One is to resolve urban problems such as traffic congestions and air pollution. And second case is to pursue sustainable growth, and the third one is to promote digital economic development. So in our country, our government led the pilot study of smart city model next version of ubiquitous city. So thinking about the mechanism of smart city, thinking about the framework of this urban structure, we can see the tangible physical infrastructure such as road and transportation system and utility system. This is physical infrastructure. And next step is we're thinking about the cyber infrastructure system. We connect this physical to cyber infrastructure, and we get some solutions from this combination of physical infrastructure and cyber infrastructures. Someone says it's a GPS of urban system. So after that, we're thinking about the social solutions and services model. And sometimes we're thinking about the smart governance model of city systems. So in our country, we're thinking about these three types of system and how can we integrate this different system with one goal. So that is the example of National Smart City Pilot Project. One is Sejong 5-1 district. The other is Busan Ecuador City. This model started from scratch. So in the case of Sejong district, we make some social mix model for its urban development. So we designated some area for car-free zone, and we adopted some autonomous vehicle, autonomous shuttle, and we adopt some healthcare system and smart energy system also. So that is it's a convergence of different technology in one area, in one space, and it pursues some sustainable urban development. And next one is Busan Ecuador Delta City. You know, the Busan is the second largest city in our country. So this Ecuador Delta City is located the west of Busan, and the total concept is, you know, the circular city, smart water city. So this district is located in the border between the sea and the river. So they're thinking about how can we utilize these kinds of water resources in these cities. And in our organization, we call it KAIA. KAIA has achieved so many things based on physical infrastructure and ICT solutions for physical infrastructure. For example, smart bridges, smart highways, zero energy houses, and high speed railway, and long span bridges and high-rise buildings also. So among them, I can introduce some cases which is related to the smart city solutions. One is integrated operation center. At first, we developed some video management system in one center. After that, we connected some other solutions, for example, crime protection and environment monitoring systems. We connect these different systems at one platform. After then, we develop and improve these kinds of integrated operation center. Nowadays, we connect AI solutions to this integrated operation center. Next version is smart transportation. Partly, we developed transportation solutions such as one pass card and online ticketing and free toll passing system. We call it high pass, and we developed this one lane high pass system to multi-lane passing system. We call it smart tolling system. And nowadays we're developing mass mobility as a service solutions. And next solution is zero energy house, which is located in Seoul Noan area. We call it zero energy housing. So based on these zero energy housing structures, we get some data for energy management, for example, energy consumptions and renewable energy production. Based on this technology background, we developed and we conceptualized National Strategic Smart City Program. So left one is the data-driven, data-centric smart city. We thinking about the data flow of the smart city. And right one is I explained the structure of a smart city from city infrastructure to data hub or cyber infrastructure, and to finally it is connected to service systems. So this is the overview of our project. So in the middle of this slide, there is a base technology model. One is digital twin and massive IoT network system and edge computing solutions. And the last one is data hub system. So we developed these kinds of technologies until last year. And the left one is the demonstration model for Daegu. The population Daegu is about 2,500,000, and the use cases are smart mobility and disaster management, and the citizen engagement solutions. And the right one is a small city. The population of Siheung is about 500,000. So we tried some living model of smart cities. For example, air quality monitoring system, energy management system, and healthcare system, especially for disabled person. And this model is very famous and important model for us and other experts, because this is the first version of the data hub model in the world. So we tried to make some standardization of this data hub model in the world, because this data hub model covers whole the use case model in a city, and we modularize this data hub functions from data ingest module to data core module and data analytics module, security model, and other connectivity model and application model. This is the basic model of our data hub system, and we attach it some solutions to this data model, and they customize this data model to Daegu and Siheung. So we have developed this data hub model maybe 2019, but that we are faced the COVID-19 early February last year in our country. So we experienced the pandemic situation in Daegu. So after that, our researchers gathered, and we're thinking about the best solutions for against COVID-19, which solution is beneficial for this COVID-19 strategy. So we determined the use of this data hub model. So, we call it EISS, epidemiological, it's an investigation supporting system. Normally it takes maybe 1 day for investigation for confirmed patient. But if we use this system, the duration of investigation was shortened dramatically. 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, we can investigate the confirmed patient's passage. It's past 2 weeks. So we used this system for confirmed patient spread and network analysis. So dramatically, we could threaten the peak happening of confirmed cases in our country. That's the reason why our country is maybe better than other countries for COVID-19 situations. So after that, we developed a more advanced version of this EISS. Our government is thinking about the combination of these EISS and the quarantine solutions, application solutions, and we're thinking about the national disaster system. So that's the best practice of our systems. After that, many Korean citizens engagement for volunteering and monitoring, and it's you know, the our people is very loyalty to our government. So that's the reason why we can overcome some situations, dangerous situations, easily, more easily than other countries. And our government initiated the national regulation system for smart cities. Since 2008, we established the law of smart city. And nowadays, we tried some regulation improvement by use of sandbox, regulatory sandbox. Right side shows the effect of regulatory innovation. And nowadays, we develop some concept of international standardization of smart cities totally. So we designed some several projects for smart cities. One case is about smart city governance and data governance, and it's a legal system. How can we design the strategy and the framework of smart cities? So we're thinking about project management solutions. So nowadays we call it PPP. PPP means portfolio, program, and project systems. So next model is about the combination of each domains. For example, transportation and energy, or energy and building. And sometimes we're thinking about the data hub system and other platforms. That is our theme of international standardization of smart cities. This slide shows the concept and the framework of this international standardization of smart cities. Maybe TTA and other standardization organization and other research institutes participating in this project. Finally, I introduced the final model of Korean smart cities. We make some roadmap of smart cities for 10 years. And sometimes we develop some other advanced data model. And we tried many use case model in a small town and metropolitan area. So maybe I hope SC and EU expert and organization join our partnership and our collaboration program for smart cities for the future and for the humankind. So I definitely believe the smart city solution and digital solution can be a good strategy for against COVID-19 and it's the chaotic situation. So I hope the standardization is very important and the collaboration is more important, I think. That's my final remark. And this is our another project for KCT network. So yesterday we received the proposal all over the world. We would like to sponsor some solutions, Korean solutions to other countries, Middle East and Southeast Asian countries and Latin America and other European countries. So that is our ongoing project. Okay, thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll welcome questions after the second presentation. And I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Olavi Luotonen, who is working at the European Commission in DG Connect in the unit focusing on technologies for smart communities, and he will give us the European approach to smart cities. Olavi, the floor is yours, and thank you.
Thank you. Let's see now. I'm at the wrong end of the presentation here for some reason, so I will just go to the beginning. Right, here we are. Yes, hello, my name is Olavi Luotonen, and I work in Brussels since 1998. Before that, I was in ICT industry. So actually, now that we talk about 5G and 6G, there is an interesting history for me, in the sense that I joined ICT industry first time in 1988 when I went to Nokia to do a mobile data system study. That was about 2-3 years before GSM started, and then, you know, 10 years after I joined the European Commission, and 2006 I was Commission contact for the Finnish EU presidency, launching the European Network of Living Labs. Now the colleague just mentioned the Living Labs model there as well, so I'm happy to see that the Living Labs are well alive also in Korea. Now 2008 I proposed the first combination of smart cities, living labs and future internet into what was then the Competitiveness and Innovation Program, or CIP program, the innovation program in Europe. And we had about 20 projects between 2010 and 2015. Then in 2015, there was in the Future Internet Research and Experimentation, or FIRE program, project called Organicity. And that was important for getting started the Open and Agile Smart Cities, or OASC or OASC network. And I'm actually happy to say that the colleague just mentioned Busan and Sejong, they are actually in that network of Open and Agile Smart Cities as the South Korean chapter of Open and Agile Smart Cities, which was born in Europe, but this has been a global network from the beginning. So already there as well, we had a common, let's say, history with then Synchronicity project 2017-2019, where I was project officer. There it was Seong Nam from South Korea who was participating in that IoT large-scale pilot, which had a 15 million funding from European Commission and was 100 million IoT large-scale pilot program altogether. And these have been very important in validating also the standards. And now I have just recently moved from beginning of this month from the IoT unit to the unit called Technologies for Smart Communities. So I'm now presenting more from that point of view. But what I just said, I just wanted to say that we have had this common history of both on the IoT side as well as on the smart cities side. The way we now see the opportunities for cooperation overall, we see it both, of course, in this bilateral cooperation, which we are now, as well as also on the G20 collaboration, where in fact, you know, of course, South Korea has had already the first G20 meeting 10 years ago and summit 10 years ago, and And there, well, for example, the Open and Agile Smart Cities were very active 2 years ago when it was in Japan, the G20 summit. And there clearly there are also important opportunities for cooperation in the area of smart cities. Now then, this is a kind of overall view like a colleague was presenting. Well, originally the title has been supporting AI-enabled solutions in cities. Well, in fact, I added IoT and I added communities because, well, for example, in the Digital Europe program, which is now in the final stages of drafting and acceptance, actually the title is AI, artificial intelligence, but in fact, of course, you have to get the data some way, and that way very often, of course, is through IoT, sensor networks, etc. So already in Synchronicity IoT large-scale pilot, they clearly started saying, well, this is AI and IoT enabled smart cities actually, and there, well, it's a question of rollout of local digital platforms. We have started more and more to say local, meaning urban and rural. Our Director General Roberto Viola said 2 years ago at this Open and Agile Smart Cities conference that, you know, he very much encouraged us to go for smart communities, meaning not only smart cities but also smaller communities, of which there are, of course, very many in Europe. And so now, for example, with the view to the Digital Europe program, there will clearly be activities on the AI-powered digital twins, including smart cities and communities, and then local data services to validate the data ecosystem. And there clearly it is an issue of both, let's say, the horizontal view, for example, a data space for climate neutral and smart communities, including cities, and then, you know, the verticals which are mentioned there, like mobility, climate adaptation, energy. So we think that this way of looking, like colleague was saying, you know, the way of looking at smart cities and communities as the kind of cross-cutting or horizontal, you know, getting together of the data from the different sectors, from the different vertical sectors is a very important way to look at it. And when we look at, for example, the Digital Europe program, which is a deployment program on the side of Horizon Europe, which will be started as a research and innovation program, clearly there are these different layers, of course, with infrastructure data, interoperability being very important. I will come back to that. Testing and experimenting still, you know, we have worked a long time with the living labs, and then, you know, then the actual deployment. And within the Digital Europe program, there is especially this work on the data ecosystem for smart and sustainable communities together with the Green Deal data space. And of course, from the European point of view, really the highest items on the overall agenda are the Green Deal and the digital fit, you know, fit for the digital age. So these are both, in a way, cross-cutting across different vertical sectors, and they also need to work together. And then there is this testing and experimentation layer with AI. Now, importantly, we have launched with the Finnish presidency again in 2019, we have launched so-called Join, Boost, Sustain declaration, which is the basis for the Living in EU movement, as we call it, which is about the European way of digital transformation in cities and communities. And their local data platforms to boost the digital transformation are really central. It is a political declaration signed so far over 85 public administration signatories, mayors or ministers. It can be signed, well, mainly by mayors on the city or community level, but it can also be signed on the regional level or national level. And for example, Finland and Estonia signed when the movement was launched during the Finnish EU presidency. And this is very much a citizen-centric approach and an open innovation ecosystem approach, where of course technologies are key enablers there. And concretely, it has 5 different subgroups where the Living in EU works. It has a financial, technical, legal, education and capacity building, and measuring and monitoring, and then the overall steering board. And if you want to look more closely into this, you can go to the website Living in EU, so living-in.eu, and you can get a closer picture on the Living in EU movement. Now we are here very much on the technical side. So on the technical side, the core of the Living in EU work is the so-called minimal interoperability mechanisms, or MIMs for short. And they are context information management, where we are very grateful for the collaboration with ETSI on having had the actual ETSI specification as the basis where we have worked together. Synchronicity project partners have been there. Other partners have been there working in the ETSI framework to develop the specification on context information management, which is really the core of the MIM1 or the minimal interoperability, the first minimal interoperability mechanism. And then building on top of that, there are common data models as MIM2, and then the enabling of the marketplace as MIM3, personal data management as MIM4, and fair AI as MIM5. The MIMs 1, 2, and 3 are already established and approved all the way by the Open and Agile Smart Cities Council of Cities, and they are then the Open and Agile Smart Cities is leading the Living in EU technical work and technical subgroup, and then driven by the city of Helsinki, the personal data management work is now strongly ongoing, and driven by the city of Amsterdam, the fair AI or MIM5 work is ongoing. And then the actual reference, for example, in the Digital Europe program is or will be what is the so-called MIMS Plus, where the MIMS themselves from OASC are at the core, and then there are other key elements such as SAREF, where of course we have very much worked with ETSI as well, and many others globally as well. Now, all of that you can find if you want to find the actual technical specification. You can look for the MIMS Plus technical specification, which is now at its version number 3, can be found, for example, at the Living in EU website, or just searching for the MIMS Plus technical specification. Now, in preparation for the Digital Europe program, the Commission has organized workshops on artificial intelligence for smart cities, on digital twins of cities, and now latest in March for the local digital twins technology. And we have regular meetings with the Living in EU declaration signatories as well. Now, as I said, Open and Agile Smart Cities, which is at the core of the technical work of the Living in EU, has also a South Korean chapter with Busan and Sejong. And we are, of course, very delighted about this. Now, looking into the view of Open and Agile Smart Cities, which is actually in the process of becoming Open and Agile Smart Cities and communities, again saying, you know, it's not only about smart cities, but also wider about the communities. And as I said in the beginning, the key really is to see the smart communities as cross-cutting, cutting across the different vertical sectors. And the MIMS then form the common technical ground to deliver good value with data across the different sectors. And the MIMS will also be instrumental for the development of the data space for climate neutral and smart communities, federated at the EU level, and initiatives supported by the Digital Europe program, in line with the ambition to build a common European Green Deal data space. And the MIMS themselves are technology agnostic. They support also increasingly the real-time aspects, as data is of course collected dynamically in the IoT and analyzed dynamically directly at the edge or in the cloud. And we are of course now talking more and more about the IoT and edge computing, and you can either kind of go from the IoT towards the edge, or you can go from the cloud towards the edge. And this here shows how the MIMS fit into the overall Living in EU high-level architecture with the MIMS 1 through 5, which I already explained. And then next in pipeline is a geospatial information MIM and a circular resource management MIM. And very concretely, the Open and Agile Smart Cities had its festival now, of course, online in January. It is always in January, where we have had also South Korean representation there. And it is also has launched the so-called city by city or community by community academy, which is being built for the capacity development, and also a C by C catalog, which then has the MIMS compliant components. Now, as I mentioned before, we are going from smart cities also to smart communities. I am, for example, the project officer for a new 30 million EU initiative, which has two large innovation projects called Auroral and D-Rural, which are based on rural digital service platforms, innovation ecosystems, a smart village approach, and very much standards again at the forefront with the MIMS. And there, the minimal interoperability mechanisms addressing the interoperability of data systems and services is really at the technical core. And the OASC as a partner in the rural as well, and is very much working with both of these projects. I invite you to register for the European Regions for Smart Communities Summit, which is under the Portuguese current EU presidency, happening in May, first week of May, especially from May 3rd to 7th, and then even some activities during the weekend when we have the EU Day on the 9th of May. So you are free to go to look this up and register. I would also like to mention under the with the DG GROW colleagues of the European Commission working with the 100 Intelligent Cities Challenge, where also the MIMS are heavily there. And last, I want to invite you to sign the Living in EU declaration and join the movement. Now, the actual kind of core signatories are EU mayors and ministers, but you can sign in the form of the so-called "We support living in EU." So any mayors or any public administration, or indeed city or community or university or even companies can sign as "We support living in EU." So I invite you to look into that as well. So join the Living in EU movement. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olavi, for this presentation, where I noted a very interesting and relevant shift from smart cities to smart communities, and the extension and probably the applicability of a number of the concept and schemes developed for smart cities to other communities and the wider also some rural communities. It is very interesting. In the interest of time, I will probably ask people to bring the questions during the panel discussions. I noticed in your presentation, Olavi, you mentioned in, I think it's in MIM 4, that privacy is also taken into account as part of it's personal data management, and that means both security and privacy are addressed. And therefore, I'd like to ask the question to Mr. Cho, if in the data hub model, also there is consideration given for privacy of data, as we're obviously touching on citizen-related data.
Okay, thank you. Actually, data issue is very critical in smart cities. So in our country, our the strict law prohibit the usage of personal data for private, for profit, or for personal purpose. So actually, our government manages the usages and the identification of personal data for public health or public welfare and governmental issues. This personal data can be used for the more variable situations. But last year, maybe our government, our assembly passed another data law is covering some anonymously usage of personal data for smart city, or for example, telecommunication data or traffic data for more variable application model for data trading and for data market. But in the case of smart cities, actually until now, most of the solutions are developed for local government or central government. So most of the data are controlled well by our government. But if we develop some kinds of this data model, which pursue the combination of public data and private data, so we should make some data governance for the usage of this personal data, and we make some security is a principle for personal data usage. And we're thinking about data ownership and the data users' activities for spatial intention of smart city data. And that is until now is very complicated and is until unsolved issues for personal data in our country. So maybe nowadays many data scientists, data regulators, and data government officers come together and they discuss about the best way for the usage of personal data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think it's very clear through both of your presentations that data and data management is an area where a lot of work still needs to be happening, and especially considering how applications, AI systems will also feed on that data, and therefore I think the rest of our discussions today will also stress this. So actually, I mean, thanks again to both of you for the presentations. I will now move to keeping the time under control. I'll now move to our two next presenters, who are going to give us a very practical account of how this, I mean, rolling out smart cities or implementing smart cities take place in Europe. And I would like first to invite Mr. Sung-Young Jong from KT, the Korea Electronics Technology Institute, to give us information about a Korean use case. Just for information to the participants, ETSI and KT have already been cooperating in the context of Indico through, for example, the development of a very comprehensive tutorial on the 1M2M standard. And we would like again to thank KT for their involvement in the project on one hand, and in the 1M2M work as well on the other hand. Sung-Young, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Can you hear me?
I can hear and see you.
Okay, and can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So actually, thank you for the introduction of myself and the history that we worked together for the Indico and the 1M2M advanced kind of tutorial kind of events and materials. So I also see a familiar face other than Xavier, which is kind of Olavi, because he mentioned kind of several times regarding the synchronicity, and I or the KT was the consortium leader from the Korean consortium who participated the synchronicity project, which is basically the European project for the smart city large-scale pilot. And yeah, we were invited, and it was a really kind of interesting experiences, and it was a really kind of beginner's kind of project. So yeah, I personally am interested in or familiar with the memes and the interoperability. How do we achieve that, like the context management kind of APIs and the common data models, and further like the BIM 4 and 5. Yeah, those are the interesting kind of topics for the kind of move forward. Anyways, as you can see from the title, I today am representing the Daegu Smart City, and just for reference, I have not kind of personally kind of involved directly to the Daegu Smart City projects, but I will be kind of explaining or describing some kind of history from Daegu regarding the 1M2M standard, how they adopted the standard into their smart city deployments. So I am kind of legitimate somehow to represent Daegu Smart City to you. And the presentation material has been kind of prepared by the Daegu Techno Park. And on behalf of Techno Park, yeah, I got some kind of information to deliver to you. So I will start my presentation. So just briefly, so where is Daegu and what is Daegu? So as Dr. Joe mentioned, Daegu is a really big metropolitan city having 2.5 million population, and it's kind of far from Seoul as we think, but if you kind of think about the size of the South Korea, it's still a small country. So it's close, kind of close from the Incheon airport next to Seoul. And here is the location of the Daegu. So it's on the southeast of South Korea. So table of contents, and I'd like to spare several minutes to show you the 1M, 2M related materials, not in the slides, but on the website. But sadly, the websites are just written in Korean, so I couldn't kind of put it into the slides. So I will probably explain what has been kind of supported for the developers to support IoT enabled smart cities in Daegu. So yeah, anyways, I will kind of move on. So this is the background for the smart city in Daegu. So to improve the citizens' kind of life quality and put some new businesses from the smart city, Daegu was really serious regarding the smart city. And by building the smart city, they try to kind of achieve two major goals. One is the kind of industrial growth, and before Daegu was a kind of old kind of industry kind of oriented kind of metropolitan city, but now they are transforming somehow with the digital transformation, and with that they really try to kind of bring some kind of life quality enhancement to the citizens. And this is the thing that I just mentioned. So traditionally, before they are involved in the kind of first kind of industrial revolution, having kind of water sector and the mobility, healthcare, energy, robotics, now they have added the smart city as a new industry area that they are seeking for the future. And one thing to notice is in the city of kind of Daegu, they have a dedicated kind of divisions for each sector, like water and robotics and even smart city. That's why they had all the momentums to have a really good achievement so far that you are going to see in really soon. And traditionally, Daegu was well known for the machinery and the fiber and glasses and malls. And they are trying to become a new city or the digital city. And they are not abandoning the traditional industries, but they somehow want to get some harmonies with the new industries. So this is the map of Daegu. And as you can see, the messages that I want to kind of deliver really short is they have a citywide deployments for the smart cities for different stakeholders and different smart city areas, like the Alpha City, which would be the really a kind of core testbed, which will be expanded to the other area in Daegu, and healthcare, and a lot of startups are there, and the research institutes are kind of convened in a area. So they have two major strategies. One is the testbed, and maybe something similar in line would be the living lab. And we mentioned the living lab in the first session. So they want to kind of make the city, the citywide, they want to have a citywide testbed. So they can bring the other startups or the SMEs or enterprises to bring their technologies and have some test or the proof of concepts in the city. So they really support that testbed strategy. And regarding the living lab, they have kind of joined the kind of ANOR, which is the European Network of Living Labs. And yeah, as I remember, yeah, they joined the ANOR like 2 years ago, and they are the regular member to kind of share some kind of knowledges, how they engage with the citizens in their living labs. And living labs are really activated by the citizen participations since 2019. So they have kind of annual kind of activities offline and online. And yeah, the thing that I really want to mention is they are kind of inviting companies for their test beds, and they really want to get the citizens' participation with the active living labs. And the other strategies they are kind of doing is the PPP. As you are familiar from European side, the PPP is the public-private partnership. And public, so that is the city of Daegu, and they support kind of private sectors, private companies to kind of support the test beds and the other, and maybe the kind of overseas kind of businesses and so on. And to achieve that overseas expansion or some having a, for example, the some testbed or the kind of collaboration with the European company or the European city, they really want to endorse standards, for example, the 1MPM that they have used before. So it can be reused in the other cities in Europe or the other continents. So in the PPP strategy, one of the core kind of concept is endorsing the standard. So from now on, I'm going to kind of explain briefly regarding the kind of smart cities kind of deployments. And the reason that I say deployments is like in Daegu, as we saw, there are different areas, local geographical areas with different projects in different project terms. So there has been a lot of kind of projects and the commercial deployments. And let's see one by one. And before we do that, what I want to say in this slide is they have actively supported smart city works since 2016. And before 2016, so what they mean by that are, okay, there can be some smart city deployments or kind of projects before 2006, but it was all fragmented ones. And they really wanted to kind of connect the dots to have some lines. So they have started drawing lines, and nowadays they have some pens. So this is a kind of concept that they say they are really serious about the smart city projects, and the city really supports the citizens and the kind of enterprises. So this is a kind of roadmap, or let me say the history about the Daegu Smart City. And they have started the Smart City project since 2016 very seriously, because they kind of launched the task force inside the city of Daegu. And now I think this is a kind of misleading kind of interpretation, but I would say the Smart City division. As I said, 5+1 domains have designated kind of division in the city of Daegu. And yeah, with the smart city division in the city side, the other kind of deployments or the roadmaps or the kind of collaboration with the external bodies, it was really kind of active. And one thing to kind of tell you is, in the last year, like October, the World Economic Forum, they have launched the Smart City, Global Smart City Alliance by G20, and Daegu was selected, and it was the only city from South Korea. And there would be some kind of white paper, what have been done in Daegu this year. That's what I heard. And regarding the Living Lab Exchange demonstration, it's basically the kind of piloting what has been done in Daegu to the European country, and the remote kind of water metering with the AMAs. It has been kind of also kind of approved in Amsterdam last year. And they had kind of a couple of plans, which was the basis for all the smart city work. And the first one was industrial strategy regarding smart city. So this is not dedicated to the smart city for the Daegu. And this year, they are working on the Daegu Smart City Master Plan. So there will be the other kind of movement or the momentum for Daegu to thrive all the smart city activities. So services I will just briefly mention before I get into something regarding 1M10, which is one of our topic for today. So they have a self-driving car testbed, and they had the challenges inviting students to kind of have some competition to get the winner. And there was a kind of traffic control services deployments with the kind of deep learning with the CCTV images. So they wanted to have some advanced system to mitigate the traffic control, traffic jams in the city. And smart grid and something. Okay, I will kind of take a bit longer time than the other kind of services. So there was the kind of smart park in Suseong-gu area. And the vendor was the SK Telecom, who is the biggest kind of mobile operator in Korea, who have implemented 1M tram and who got certified from the TTA before. So they use their 1M tram based systems for the smart park in one area. And for the smart water metering, for the remote AMI, they have used the LoRa plus kind of 1M10 because in their system, SK Telecom's kind of platform, the data gathered from LoRa kind of private network, they are kind of collected into their 1M system, which is the Think Plug. And this is the Suseong Alpha City, and Suseong is one of the kind of district name in Daegu, and there is a big or the advanced kind of testbed in Daegu, and there are kind of 5 different domains as you can see on the screen, and there are kind of 13 services deployed and still kind of sustained. And yeah, here is the website that I mentioned before, and yeah, they are still written in Korean, but I want to kind of show you and interpret something to you. So firstly, this is the kind of main website for the Daegu Suseong Alpha City, the website. And if I go down, skip it. So these are the services, and if you click on it, you will see some PowerPoint slides in PDF, but sadly, most of them are written in Korean, but you can see some diagrams and you can see some kind of labels in English. That's not so important, I think. And yeah, for example, so this is the kind of certificate kind of document from TTA that was received by SK Telecom, and they are using the platform ThinkPlug for the Daegu Suseong Alpha City. And yeah, since it's really moving quickly. So this is the kind of system architecture diagram that they have provided on the website, and you can see some kind of English wording like open API, not everything, but they have adopted the 1M2M to collect data from the field, because in the field there are many sensor devices deployed and they use 1M2M kind of APIs and gather data. And that's one thing. And so that is the main website to generally kind of explain what has been done in Daegu Suseong Alpha City. And if we go to the other website, which is the kind of dev website for the developers, sorry, but the contents are still written in Korean. But what I want to say is, so they support developers to use their system, which adopts the 1M2M. And for example, so for the developers who are not so familiar with 1M2M or who never heard about 1M2M, they provide developer guides in Korean. And there is the developer kit that supports Windows and Linux. and this is the kind of platform introduction, if I interpret it. And the flow is like this. So you as a developer or the startup, you register your own service. And once you register your service, then you register your devices into the 1M10 platform. That's why you would see some kind of 1M10 jargons like remote CSE and so on and so on. And then if you kind of register everything and you kind of push your data into their platform in 1M10, then you can check your data with the pre-configured or easily manipulatable dashboard like this with map and some kind of widgets like this. So this is, again, the supporting the developers who are not familiar with 1M10 and so on and so on. So they can test the APIs, which basically is the 1M10 API. And for the startups who don't have the real physical devices, they can also use some kind of simulated devices to test or play with the 1M10 platform. So this is the kind of public offering from Daegu Susan Alpha City. So this is the link for you. And the other one is the topic that Dr. Zhou already mentioned. So Daegu is one of the city participating in the National Strategic Smart City Program. And yeah, also I work for Katie, and Katie is also involved in the program, which develops the Smart City Data Hub platform, as we saw in the first session. So I will skip over this slide for the moment. Yeah, I think you can just kind of take it by yourself. So this is the last slide. So for the future collaboration, Daegu, they have a lot of experiences having different projects, some experimental and some commercial deployments, and citizens are really engaging the smart city activities in living labs, and Daegu City is always inviting the companies, private companies with PPP, and they support some kind of overseas kind of collaboration also. So there are a lot of kind of success stories, and Daegu welcomes the collaboration in the context of kind of the pilots with the European partners or some business discussion and so on. Yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sung-Young, for this presentation. Before I come to questions, I will invite our other speaker to talk about the view from a European project. And I would like to welcome now Mr. Ingo Friese, who is involved in the European R&D program called My Smart Life. And he will talk to us about this transition of cities towards this concept of smart life and economy, focusing on the city of Hamburg. Ingo, welcome, and the floor is yours. And you're...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me share my screen. Okay. Now you should see my first slide, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the warm introduction. I'm a more technical guy, so I hope it's not too technical, but I want to talk about the ICT aspects in the EU project My Smart Life. My Smart Life is in fact a huge program. It was a 5-year project with many partners from different industries, from academia and also smaller small enterprises. So in fact, it's about topics about renewable energies, about retrofitting of housing. Some cities they test their electrical fleets of electric buses, and and there are also partners or 3 partners. Or in fact, there are more cities, but 3 European cities are also involved in the project, and then they are called the so-called Lighthouse Cities. This is Helsinki in Finland, Nantes in France, and Hamburg, the city of Hamburg in Germany. And around these cities, or the cities there, they form a kind of hub, a core of a hub. So the city of Hamburg within the My Smart Life project has many different partners, and one of them is Deutsche Telekom. So it's a communication company from Germany, so where I'm employed, and so and that's why. So we worked with the city of Hamburg in the My Smart Life project. In My Smart Life, there are dozens of different use cases, and I highlighted on this slide few of them. So it's about it's all that. One huge area is, for example, mobility. It's about smart parking. It's traffic routing, bike sharing, electrical vehicle charging, and of course the smart routing of traffic through smart traffic lights. Another huge topic is all around energy. So it's about smart grids, and for example, they have some areas where they produce energy from wind energy, and at the same, so not far from that, there they have the depot, the center for the e-buses, and so they charge them with that green energy. And as you can see also here, smart street lighting. It's street lighting itself is also a huge topic, because they dim it. They can dim streets at night, or when there are bad weather conditions, they can switch it on. And another rather big topic in this area is also the environment. So there's air quality monitoring, observing noise levels in the city, and this is also used for weather forecasts on a micro level, so that you can, for example, protect your certain facilities when there are really heavy weather conditions. So this is, for example, one thing, just to have an idea what it is about. So we have, with a platform I'm going to talk in a minute. We implemented some use cases, like, for example, the electric vehicle charging. The idea is you can see which stations are occupied and which are free. The idea is to have a platform that provides these kind of data, and on top of that, third parties or small startups or small developers or they can build their applications and reuse this kind of data. But for that, it needs an ICT platform that collects all the data and provides them or publishes them. And so one precondition for this kind of project is transparency. And the city of Hamburg, they have a so-called transparency law. And this law, or this guideline, in fact, it means that all data that are sourced in the public they have to be published again to the public. So there's that everybody has an access to this kind of data, and this is on one hand side. These are static data, so the opening hours of the kindergarten or of some of authorities, stuff like that, but also for live data, so for for dynamic processes. So and then this is quite so, and the city of Hamburg is quite modern and quite ahead of other cities here. So to me, it's really a role model. And when it comes to, so when they wanted to build up this kind of platform where they publish all these events, all these live events that a certain each EV charging station is available or not, then they needed a platform or an ICT infrastructure where they can gather this data and where they can publish it in order that third parties can build their application on top of it. And then it comes to then there was a decision. Okay, we want standards, because standards prevent us from being locked in a so-called vendor lock-in, and it's a standards guarantee you also the interoperability with other partner cities, because in a smart city you have a system of systems. So you have infrastructures already there, and there are partners, they have their own infrastructure, and you want to bring these things together, and so you need interoperability, and in order to drive this interoperability you need standards. The problem is that there is in fact not that one standard where you can say, okay, we have in IoT or in a vertical like a smart city, we have that one standard. So this is a little bit the problem. So how to choose the right one? But the colleagues from the city of Hamburg, they did. So they decided to go for the Sensor Things API from the Open Geospatial Consortium. So it's a so-called, and there's an server available, or a software available. It's a so-called Frost server, and so it's an open source system. And the really remarkable thing is that the city of Hamburg, they decided to go for open source, and they downloaded, in fact, with this kind of software. They put it in a cluster. They built around, everything was that state of the art. Put it in the state of the art, environment. And in fact, they did not spend any money to software licenses, and it's completely built on open source, and it's a huge and powerful platform. So this is really remarkable, because you can buy really huge systems from the named vendors, and you can pay millions for that. But the city of Hamburg went the way of using open source, and that's great. So, and then it's very small. It's just, if you go to this URL, you can click you through various sources of data in Hamburg, for example, with the status of the different charging stations, or even these traffic lights status and stuff like that. So here, really, small startups and young companies, they can build their apps on top of it and offer services to the citizens of Hamburg. So what we have done in fact, in My Smart Life, ICT platform that we used in MySmartLife is twofold. So there's on one hand side, we have a part that was built by Hamburg, and that's a so-called open data platform that you can see here in on the left side. I hope it's also in your in your case on the left side. Yeah, I think so. And on the right side, there was a part that we built from DT side. And so we used another standard. We used 1M2M that was already mentioned here in another presentation. And so what we did in this project is to connect these both standards, because that's, as we had in the beginning, as I said in the beginning, when you are not sure in which way to go or which standard to use for your platform, then it's great if you have the possibility to connect to different ones. So if there's as long as it's another standard, and so you can connect it, and then you can broaden the consumer, the customer base, or even the base of different systems that you can connect. So, and in MySmartLife, we connected both the Sensor API and the 1M2M to one platform, and we developed this bridge. And in order to demonstrate what it means, so this enables, for example, applications that usually only talk to, so Hamburg's applications that usually only talk to the Sensor Things API server, they are also enabled to see or to read or to use data coming from 1M2M sensors, or from values or data that coming from the 1M2M side, and the other way around. So applications that usually talk to only talk 1M2M in this standard world, they are also enabled to use data from the OGC side. And we currently are on the way to standardize this, or to define this this connection. We call it's called gateway, but it's more precisely an IP and an interworking proxy entity. But yeah, it's let's say in day-to-day speech, it's a gateway between these technologies, and then we try to harmonize it in the TR 0065 and 1M2M. It's still quite thin, but we are working on it. Yeah, this is maybe too technical, but just as to give you an impression what is the difference. So the Sensor Things API comes from the Open Geospatial Consortium. So this is quite this Open Geospatial, like the name said, it's about, it's about neighborhoods, about planning of floor of so what the city is doing anyway. And so it was quite natural that they choose the standard, the STA, the Sensor Things API, because that's a part of the OGC. And there was that's great software available. The Frost server, I think there are also others, but they use the Frost server from the Fraunhofer Institute. And yeah, so this is quite, and it's quite easy handling. So yeah, the disadvantage is that there's not much for access control, and in terms of protect single data points. But it's not the use case. So because they want to publish it, or they want to bring the data to the public, so it was completely enough to use this Sensor Things API. So we choose 1M2M because we want to use the platform also for other use cases, but 1M2M has a sophisticated access control model. So you can, for example, say, okay, certain kind of data can be seen by these parties, and these data can be changed or seen by that party. And so this, for example, is just one example. And so 1M2M is a little bit more sophisticated, and there are various commercial and free solutions available, but you have to touch them. You have still to do a little bit of work to put everything around the AEs and stuff like that. Yeah, just to give you a rough overview of the comparison. But the nice thing is, if you want to connect them, then you have a quite powerful system. Yeah, what you see there. So when we will dig a little bit deeper into the system, so just the 1M to M, and also is we used it as a kind of bridge across different backends. And here you can see, for example, there are different lighting systems. Frederis and Turbosolentes, these are street light systems. And when I mentioned at the beginning this use case of dimming lights, or when there is a heavy weather condition, then you can detect it with this, for example, with this Breeze backend. Breeze is an environmental sensor, and you can detect heavy rain or something, and then you can switch on lights in the city, regardless of what kind of vendor is behind, because we built the bridge. What's remarkable is that most of the sensors, they come along with their own infrastructure and with their own backend system, and this is maybe a good example for this system of systems, because they have you need a bridge. You build with this kind of bridge, you build this system of different backend systems. And yeah, on top of it, you can see the companies that can build their application on top of it. And yeah, basically that's of course that's my last slide. This urban platform, of course, is just it's a part of a smart city stack or smart city ecosystem. Of course, you have the devices and the connectivity. We support various connectivities from LoRa, wireless LAN, 5G, and these are covered by the infrastructure backends. And then comes this kind of bridge, and on top of that, you can put on one hand side either direct applications where you can control something, or also data intelligence, where you put some more smartness onto it, and you discover some anomalies or whatever so we build an important core part of the or the My Smart Life project, build a core part of this smart city software stack. And this concludes also my presentation for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ingo. I mean, this is a very good to see this, I would say, practical insight into what it has taken to make this happen. I think there is a very interesting thing that we need to learn from. I would say I'm speaking here for Etsy, but I guess our colleagues from TTA would also probably have the same feeling. It's true that we go around and say use standards and build things based on standards, but in the end, we see that people who really want to implement and create things out of the standards, they suddenly face this case where there are too many standards. And so it means also that there is a long road ahead still for standardization bodies to work together and deliver global and harmonized standards, which will reduce complexity, I hope, without reducing options for people who want to implement. And it leads me to a first question to you and all the people who are present in this workshop. I think there are spaces where there are probably too many standards, but probably, as I heard also, for I don't know, data interoperability or things like this, there are probably spaces which are still a bit of gray areas, or where standards are missing actually. What would you say as what would you see as areas where we are missing standards?
I think, yeah, I think I haven't seen or they are maybe in that semantic, or let's phrase it like this: there are areas where it's quite, or where you miss some, where you miss standards, but it's for example, in that semantic area where we talk about, you know, that all that ontology stuff and so on, because but I think there's a lot of, but I have no answer how the standard could look like, because you know, even if you you transport data within this, you know, either in the sense of things API or also in the 1M 2M, but if it comes to the core data, how to define them and how to there you have, there's still at the moment it's okay just to use it. For example, where we have 3 different lighting systems, and they manage, for example, the dim level on a completely different. So they once say, for me, if there's really full light, then it's 200. Send me a 256, and the other one said send me a 100. They're just as a pure example. And for street lighting, this is okay because you have 5 systems, and yeah, then you program 5 connectors, and that's it, fine. But I can imagine that there's in the future something that there's something needed. And on the other hand side, if you can also over complex, sometimes you can over define a problem. And so I think in that semantic area, there's still something to do when when this ecosystem grows, you know.
Okay, yes, I think it is probably related to how complex the system is, and we should also avoid to enter work that ultimately creates solutions in search of a problem, if you see what I mean. So
yeah. That's the balance to find between this kind of stuff. I think that's a challenge.
Yes.
And if I add some kind of thoughts. So there would be kind of 2 topics for the data level interoperability, and one is the kind of semantic ontologies as mentioned, and the other one is the data model kind of standardization. And speaking about the semantic ontologies, Olavi already mentioned the start from the Edge standard, and in 1M is not so fast, but we started on the kind of TR work for the smart city kind of common ontologies, which will be kind of extended for different kind of smart city domains, like maybe water or kind of energy or the other. So ontologies are kind of being standardized because with the standard ontology, there would be the semantic annotation and all the semantic web technologies involved in. And if we talk about the data models, and I want to just mention from the Hamburg's presentation, the 1M from the slide, 1M does not have any standard data model, but we have one vertical domain models as a standard in test 23, and that is the kind of home appliances. So like the Zigbee or the OCF, we have the kind of home domain appliances in the standard data models, and always kind of having a vertical or domain data model in one standard body is not so easy, because we really need a lot of kind of experts. And back in maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, so in release 2 of 1M10, we worked on the first version of the TS23, like the home domain kind of appliances domain model. And there were many kind of home appliances vendors like LG, Samsung, and some kind of Chinese companies and something else. And later, once we published our first version of the TS23, then OCF kind of did the similar work, because there are as we know, there are many kind of home appliances vendors, and there has been the other work in really 3 time frame, like, okay, let's harmonize our data model. Even we are different standard bodies, so we cannot make all the data models in kind of symmetric or just equal, but we can somehow harmonize our data models, which can be smoothly converted for the interworking systems. So that's what we have been done. And lastly, for the smart city domains, and at least, for example, the smart city data hub, the big kind of smart city program that we are still doing in Korea from kind of Dr. Joe's presentation, and also Katie is involved in the data hub development. And we are trying to have the common data model, which is, of course, BIM 2 or 3, I forgot the number, anyways, from the WASC. Because we really need the data interoperability. And one of the difficulty to have that one is there are many stakeholders. For example, for the energy, there are old legacy systems and they have their own models. And there are a lot of kind of system integration companies who have tons of different kind of heterogeneous data model, proprietary ones, which would be really difficult to get the common or standardized models. But most of the people that I meet, they think we really need a common data model or kind of possibly the standard data models for smart cities. So at least in our smart city strategic program, we are trying to have our own model, and it would be standardized as the Korean national standard. And it's not so easy to have the global standard, but we already know that there is a relevant work going on within kind of FIWare, working with TM Forum and the other members. So maybe we can discuss, but I'm not so sure if we can have a global kind of standard data models for all the domains that we say smart city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Song-Young. I think this is, yes, really data. I mean, is at the heart of what we need to be able to exploit or use or consume in the best way, I would say, in these systems, especially as you mentioned, when, I mean, you don't simply build a smart city from scratch. There are plenty of already existing legacy systems, as you mentioned, that need to be plugged into the overall construction, I would say, and it is one of the key challenges, especially for infrastructures that are not here for a short time and will be replaced soon. I mean, we are talking about big investments for things that stay in place for years, and therefore we cannot simply rely on the next replacement of equipment to bring us the let's say the interfaces or the data model that we expected. We have to adapt to this, but still at the same time we need to work together in order to prepare for ultimately when these new generations of equipment come and will be rolled out, they need to adopt these interfaces and data models that ultimately will be providing a greater level of interoperability. So these are two quests, I would say, in which we are engaged, which is to make current systems work together on one end, and we are already fairly happy that we have some good glue, I would say, such as the 1M2M acting as a middleware and a common service layer, for example. But also we need to make sure that the equipments in the future need as little glue as possible to work together, and much more in a Lego-like construction, I would say, would work together. I have another question to both of you, but also for the colleagues of the European Commission or from TTA. We've heard that, I mean, many smart city topics are also addressed as part of R&D programs. And we see that let's say, R&D ultimately needs to come to the market, I would say. And one step towards the market is actually to be captured, I would say, in standardization. Do you think that in the context of smart cities, there is enough work done now to make sure that what we do at R&D level is, let's say, fed into the standardization work, has enough dissemination, I would say, through standardization? Is it something that we need to work more on, for example, to create this bridge between R&D and standardization in the context of smart cities? It looks to us, at least in NETSI, that this is probably one of the areas where we have also to create a better flow, I would say, of knowledge and of technical progress, so that ultimately we bring the progress and the advances to the market in the best way. I'd like to get your feedback on this.
Yeah, I think it's so this kind of it needs, or it's my impression is that it needs more education. So we should, or you, as a standardization organization, we should go out and make more, you know, advertisement in two directions. So one thing is it's very often not. So I experience a lot of, or in talks I heard a lot of managers that does not really have the impression that standard. So, or it's very hard to explain them, okay, why standards are, you know, important, because they say, yeah, there's company XYZ, and they build me this, you know, I get everything from one, and they developed everything, and this is so and done. So in this direction, so we have. I think there's more marketing necessary towards this direction, and the other direction is to be, as you said, to R&D. When I said it's mostly, you know, they are sitting developers where they have a problem and saying, okay, now we have to develop something, or and it's the acceptance. Yeah, it's also a question of acceptance. So if you make, for example, when a standard is too complex, for example, or not well explained, or if it's, you know, if you put to if you give a developer that has to or an architect a standard with, you know, such a pile of papers, and he just wants to, you know, solve a problem, has to do studying, you know, a month before, then the acceptance is shrinking a little bit. But I know that sometimes it's necessary, but it then needs, okay, for kind of, you know, step by step, they say, okay, for this single problems you have this card. So it's how to explain and how to. So that's what I mean with marketing towards R&D and developers. So I think that's really important, because they are very good standards sometimes outside, but they are in I don't know the the English expression. In German we call it the eierlegende Wollmilchsau. So the thing that you know, the Swiss knife that is doing everything, but it's so complex that you cannot simply use it. So so in marketing in two directions: toward managers, that standards are important, and towards developers and R&D community, in order to make it more digestible.
Yeah, maybe not too overwhelming, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. On this topic. Yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to transfer the floor to you, and highlighting that, for example, it is actually part of this work we've started to do with the help of and the support of Katie and Samyong on these 1M 2M tutorials on YouTube that help you know, get your hands and your head into the standard in a bit more I would say, friendly way. Sorry, Samin.
Yeah, thank you. So I have really a kind of dedicated or responsible work item or the TR for this matter, which is the smart city adoption for 1M, 2M. So yeah, it's like kind of 80% done and kind of rest 20% is not finished yet. And in the TR, we have kind of case studies for 1M, 2M adoption in different smart city deployments, like in the UK, like one transport, and a lot of cities in Korea, including Daegu that I kind of mentioned today. And from that, I need to kind of conclude the TR, then we can publish it as a kind of as part of dissemination, how we use 1M, 2M in smart cities in different places in the world. And the other thing that I want to mention is, and this from our R&D, which is the Korean Synchronicity project. We have finished the project like more than a year ago. And one of the things that we have kind of endorsed into the standard from the project is the geoquery. Because when you think about the smart city application, like the parking service application on your smartphone, when you open it, then you will see the map. And on the map, there will be several kind of the markers for that represents the smart parking lots. And that is being done because there was the geological kind of geospatial queries from your application to the application server and something like that. So that was not in the standard, and in release 4, now we support geoquery with the interfaces and the protocols, and you can do that. And there was the demo actually when I presented the concept to the 1M, 2M. So that is one thing that we have implemented in the R&D project first, and then brought into the standard. And the other idea that we are trying to do, which is already done for the implementation and the development, and also from Synchronicity, the Korean consortium project, which is the data marketplace. And the data marketplace would be one of the key kind of marketplace enabler for the marketplace memes from OASC, because we were in the kind of Synchronicity project. And what we have done for the data marketplace is several kind of new APIs that we can support the data marketplace portal, and 1M, 2M platform would be the backend for the data marketplace. So there will be the producers for the data who can sell their data sets as a kind of package or as a group of data instances. And once they are kind of on the table on the data marketplace portal, then the others can kind of search for it and they can purchase it. And once they purchase it, they can kind of use or they can access. And as you mentioned, there is the sophisticated kind of access control mechanisms, and we realize this data marketplace enabler in terms of access control. So when the other third party purchase a data set, then there will be the access control in the kind of backend 1M, 2M platform, and they can use it. And the benefit to support the data marketplace like that, even with my kind of further explanation, we don't need a human interaction to ask, okay, can I use your data? And please put some kind of privilege setting into the access control policy resource, something. We don't need that with the kind of data marketplace enabler. And this is the thing that we have kind of implemented as a prototype in the Korean Synchronicity project, which leverages the 1M, 2M platform on our kind of Korean side deployments. And we are trying to kind of bring it to the 1M, 2M standard in the next release.
Thank you very much. I think there was also something interesting mentioned in the presentation from Ingo, but also I know that Katie has developed this open source implementation of 1M, 2M called Mobius. And so there is an interest and an approach in both your projects and organizations to go towards open source. And I was wondering how you have taken steps to create, I would say, a community around these projects. Are they open source projects that are, I would say, ultimately supported by commercial companies that decide to put resources in order to code and maintain these projects, which ultimately are open sourced and therefore made available for reuse by the rest of the community? Or is it now also benefiting, I would say, from the support of a community that has developed around these projects?
In case of Mobius, so it's been, I'm not so sure, like 7 or 8 years since we first launched the Mobius into the public. And there has been several questions. How do you maintain your Mobius up to date? And the answer is we still have kind of IoT or AIoT related projects with the other kind of consortiums for the government projects. So we still use it. So that is the kind of motivation or momentum for us to keep it up to date. And to your question, so far we don't have a kind of commercial body or private members as the kind of contributor to the next version of Mobius or the other commercial variant of the Mobius. So we are still maintaining by ourselves, but we get feedback, we got kind of bug fix report or all the feedback from the users who are the SMEs or the other kind of business sectors. And just one thing to add, so regarding the Smart City Data Hub that we are involved in and Dr. Joe presented, so there will be the open source offerings. We are expecting it to be the next month for the kind of Smart City Data Hub, and there are kind of several functional modules having the data core and the other, and the data core is the implementation or the extended implementation of the NGS LD from the ETSI.
Okay, thank you.
And from DT side, so we started very small. So it started with a small internal R&D, and so we used as a reference we use the OM2M. It's also on the website of 1M2M.org. So it's in order to see, okay, this our platform has to behave in the same way, and we were in a competitive situation with other platform with other non-standard platforms, and so it was and even with there were also offers for 1M2M, but they come from commercial sides. But we said, hey, look, it's just R&D, so let's see. And the OM2M, for example, was great for having a reference, but we had issues if you put some database on it, and if you want to integrate it in your if you want to integrate this kind of software into your cluster and Kubernetes, so you need different endpoints and you need some additional things also in the microservice world to control it. And so we decided, because it was not our code, we decided to build our own code, and that's a little bit pity, because I think yeah, there are, well, let's phrase it like this: if there would be a more commercial interest, we would look for a commercial or we would buy somewhere core 1M2M server CSE and then put our things around. So, but the current status is in that R&D situation, we built it on our own.
Okay, so it's really an answer, I would say, or to your own needs that you felt ultimately would best come from yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, understood. I think there is also an element there where we need to educate people about the standards, what they do, how they can be used, how they can be used simply when you want to do simple things, and not how you have to learn a ton of stuff basically just to be able to do one tiny thing.
Exactly.
Driving the adoption and the usability of the standard. But I think maybe we also need to have a similar approach to these open source projects that ultimately implement those standards, because sometimes also for developers it's not that easy to get your hands into the code or to simply use it. We learn here how documentation and making things user-friendly matters. So this is a very, very important element.
Yeah,
I think
tutorials and how-tos and wanting to end the website, they for example, they have this developer corner, and that's a good first approach to. That was also our first source when we wanted to when we get used to 1M2M.
Yes, and I think it's probably good for us as standard organizations to identify this as part of the package we have to deliver. You know, it's not only the standard. We usually say we have an approach which is you define use cases or you identify use cases, you derive the requirements, then you build the architecture, and then you build the technical solution, which is the standard you deliver. But then you need test cases, and this is also part of the things we need to deliver. And I think this additional element that we just discussed is also part of the package that we need to bring out there.
Mm-hmm.
Last question before we move to the conclusion is about I mean, you are involved in various initiatives that go beyond, I would say, borders. For me, the use case of smart cities and smart communities is very telling of our need to again strengthen the international cooperation to avoid on one end this how to say, I don't know if this is the English word, this proliferation of standards which are all called standards but ultimately create I mean, standards are meant in the first place to reduce fragmentation. And if you have too many standards, ultimately you create fragmentation. So maybe there is the standard fragmentation and the non-standard fragmentation, but ultimately it's not helping. So there is a clear element of that cooperation is needed even more than it is today in order to gather people around the same tables and find common solutions. Are there, I mean, is this first thing, is this also your feeling, and are there initiatives that you would like to highlight at the moment where work should progress? I mean, obviously on our end in ETSI, and I assume also in TTA, we are very keen on seeing further work taking place in 1M2M, but there are also the project Open and Agile Smart Cities was mentioned, and the concept of minimum interoperability mechanisms is something which is also which appears to be gathering traction. Are there other things that you would like to highlight here that can be tools where international cooperation takes place?
So I totally agree that that it's important to have this, you know, this kind of international cooperation. I don't have any highlight where I say, okay, here and here, but what I want to highlight is that, I'm convinced that there will not be, that we will always have some kind of fragmentation. So we'll always live in a heterogeneous world. And I think it's a good approach to have also some kind of interworking. If you have two standards that say, okay, if we can't agree on, because we have a certain background here and a certain usage or a user base, every of these both sides have a certain user base, and then they should at least define some interworking procedures, how these standards can work together. And for example, we planned, so we had the combination with Sense of Things API to 1M2M, and now the next plan is, or what we also have is a bridge to FiWare, also, whether it's, you call it standard or not, but it's just to give you an example that that there's again many cities that use this kind of standards can then say, okay, if we also have our standards supported here, then we can use this platform or whatever. So I'm convinced that there will be a heterogeneous world with a lot of standards. We should always try to work together and to build this kind of bridges.
Thank you. I don't know if you have comments, Samyong, on this.
Not particularly, and now OneM2M is trying to kind of complete the release 4 standard really soon, and starting from release 2, which is the next version to the first release, and we really kind of focus on the interworking kind of technologies, like the interworking to OJoin, which is gone or merged into OCF, and the interworking with OCF, interworking with lightweight M2M, and the other. And in the third release, we kind of come to a kind of concept like the interworking scheme, or the term is the interworking framework. We have a dedicated kind of TS to bring or to provide a really generic way of interworking implementation for all different heterogeneous systems, standard or non-standard kind of technologies. Because there was the continuous questions coming up to the work item proposal whenever people bring, okay, I want to work on A, interworking kind of technologies, and B, interworking technologies. And eventually those are the kind of similar kind of concepts, like how do we represent different systems, devices, and services into OneM2M RESTful resources, basically mapping. Not every cases, but most of the cases. So we worked on the thing like interworking kind of framework, but still there would be needs for the other technologies which does not fit that well to the framework we invented. So the important thing is, if it is kind of requested from the market, and if we see the values to provide the interworking technology in the standard, of course, we will work on it. And as highlighted by Xavier before, we really need some dissemination, not with the standard, with all the papers, which is not so easy to kind of read for the kind of OneM2M kind of familiar developers, but the examples and the tutorials, because that is how people are learning new technologies, I think.
Yes, it's very true. We have seen in the various activities we are involved in as part of our outreach programs and things like this, that tutorials and hands-on exercises are a very, very good way to get people on board and to break this barrier of thinking that whenever the word standard is used, then it's going to be very complex. Sometimes it's as simple as this. People think that standards are going to be these insanely complex things to grasp and comprehend, and also, I mean, practice is the first and best way to learn. So it's very helpful, and I think it is also very important to keep in mind what you mentioned, Ingo, which is that we have to acknowledge that fragmentation exists and will continue to exist. It is not something that we are aiming at reducing fragmentation when it can be avoided, and that should be kept in the minds of people rolling out systems and things like this. But it is something that will still exist, and therefore the focus on interworking mechanisms is a very good way to account for that fact of life, I would say, on one hand, and still overcome this fragmentation. So that is probably one of the best things we can bring to the community out there, which is to help them overcome fragmentation, and while at the same way ensuring that we are not sending this message that any sort of legacy system, for example, needs to be thrown away and replaced and things like this, because these are simply not investments that are decided and then made from one day to the other. So I think now it's probably time to move to the conclusions for the exchange of today. I think it's a very interesting exercise we had today, and fostering exchanges such as this one today, learning from the practical experience of those who have put their hands in implementation of smart cities is also a very good way to make some real-life problems surface and identify areas of work which can ultimately make things easier for the whole community. I mean, these interworking mechanisms are definitely one area where this cooperation could take place. Also, maybe working on interoperability of data, which strikes that fine balance of being useful and let's say not dedicated only to super complex systems, is probably also another area of work, and we'll continue working basically on making sure with our partners that we bring people together to you know, foster these exchanges, work towards having a set of standards which is consistent and not creating confusion on the market. With this, I'd like to give the floor to maybe to Emilio from the European Commission, and then to Casey Koo from TTA to conclude the workshop, and to tell us what their key takeaways are for today. Emilio, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Xavier. I found the discussions quite interesting, going from first general presentation and exchange of the programs in the different regions, so South Korea, Republic of Korea on one side and the EU on the other, and then going more awareness on the importance of standards, in particular for the smart cities and policymakers, in order to get standardized solutions that then could be complemented with open source implementation, of course, and then maybe this is something we could also look at, how to organize hackathons, interoperability practice that could lead into the promotion and implementation of standards. And then finally, possibly something we should consider, how to cooperate in the international arena, so international standardization on one side, but also in initiative like the G20 Smart Cities approach and similar like that. So I think what I take from that, very nice exchange of views, and that we need, and at least from our side, we will promote, continue working together to have this from research and standardization into developing of common standards that could lead to this smart cities interoperable application. Thank you, Xavier.
Hello,
Thank you. Now, yes, please, Casey Koo, I'd like to have your own or comments about today's exchange. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for your excellent coordinate of the workshop, and very impressive of the each side of the presentation. Actually, I'm not a smart city the expert. I'm just the coordinator within the TTA. My feeling is still ambiguous, to be honest with you. The smart city, all experts said that the stem of a system. Today, Xavier, you asked the question about the fragmentation, interoperability, and the data format, data interchange. It's a middleware platform, 1M2M. There are lots of standards in the IoT area. We still have difficulty to choose the one standard. Already some experts said that. How can we do? What is the look like in the future? What is standard? Even though I in charge of the standard division in the TTA in the Korea, we still face challenge to some de jure standardization organization. You already in the first question is the barrier to the standardization, a bridge between the R&D and the R&D and standardization to the commercialization. It's very difficult issue. Say for example, IQT, IQ, some ISO IC, some have a very difficult situation, very difficult situation. A long time standardization period, complexity of the standard, nobody knows. Several years ago, TTA surveyed the barrier to the standardization. That is the complexity of the standard, long period of standardization, a language problem, patent problem. I don't know. But nowadays, you already know the open source. You also mentioned open source. We TTA also try to bridge the standardization and open source. There are two kinds of the open source project in Korea. Maybe another country is the same. The first one is the OSHA. The another one is the 1M2M. I don't know. But to be honest with you, there are many standards. There are many open source in the world. Even though TTA is the partner type 1 back in 2012, still have difficult to deploy the 1M2M to the country. Even though we are a pilot project apply to the 1M2M solution, but commercial is very sluggish. I don't know why. Even though, anyway, this is some non-positive, negative effect. But my point is that we should try to strong cooperation to cope with this difficulty to handle the our standardization society. Well, anyway, I'm sorry to say some negative effect on the standardization, but once again, the important is the international cooperation, and we try to include inclusive measures to the multi-stakeholders to the standardization area. That is the more sustainable society. I think that anyway, thank you very much for this wonderful workshop. And tomorrow we will hold some IoT security area. Maybe I'm very looking forward to some kind of big discussion about that. Anyway, thank you very much, all of you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it is also part of being realistic, what you said. We have to have this reality check at some stage. And it's important that you made these comments as well. I think we have to realize and maybe also team up in facing the challenge of ensuring that the excellent work which is performed by our communities of experts receives the level of promotion and of visibility that it deserves. And maybe this is in the area of IoT, something on which we still have to work and to make more efforts. So this is also probably one of the key lessons of today. I would like to mention briefly that I mean, in addition to the workshop we will have tomorrow focusing on IoT security, we are also teaming up once again with TTA for the holding of, and Sejong University for the holding of a 1M2M tutorial coming very soon. So it's one of these steps that we take in order to educate people, make them understand what we're doing. And so we need to take it step by step, but also to have a very firm resolve to move ahead in this direction of promotion, visibility, and making sure people understand the value of what we are producing as standards organization. With this, I think we've managed to stay relatively within the time, and I would like to thank you very much for all your comments and your participation to today's workshop. Maybe it's time for everybody to switch on their cameras and say goodbye. But this is again, I think it's always a good idea to exchange information about what we're doing, how we're doing things, and which issues we're facing, because then we can create this team to address these common challenges. With this, I'd like to thank you again, and to some of you, I say see you tomorrow for the discussion on security. Thank you very much, and a big thanks to Kate from TTA and Michael also here in the Indico team for doing a big part of this background work to make today's exchange happen. Thank you very much. And goodbye to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you tomorrow.